The small town of Ravenswood, cradled in a valley hemmed by dense, whispering forests, thrummed with the quiet rhythm of a late evening, the kind that settles over a place like a soft blanket as the world prepares for sleep. The air carried the crisp scent of pine needles, the faint tang of wood smoke curling from chimneys, and the earthy musk of damp soil, a symphony of nature that mingled with the distant hum of a tractor winding down for the night. The streets were lined with modest homes, their windows glowing with the warm flicker of oil lamps and the occasional electric bulb, casting pools of light onto cobblestone paths worn smooth by generations. Ravenswood was a town where time seemed to linger, its residents bound by tradition and the shadows of the forest that loomed at its edges, a place where stories of the unexplained were whispered around hearths on cold nights. At the far end of town, where the pavement gave way to a winding dirt road pocked with ruts, stood a secluded overlook, a favorite haunt for young lovers seeking privacy, its vantage point offering a sweeping view of the dark valley below, the stars above a glittering tapestry that seemed to pulse with secrets. Tonight, as the clock neared 8:41 p.m. on a Saturday, the overlook was occupied by a single car, a weathered blue sedan with a dented fender and a muffler that rattled faintly, its engine idling with a low purr beneath the shadow of an ancient oak, its gnarled branches clawing at the sky. Inside the car, Emily Grayson, a 22-year-old college student with curly brown hair that framed her freckled face, sat in the passenger seat, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her faded sweater, her hazel eyes darting nervously to the window. Beside her was her boyfriend, Liam Hayes, a 24-year-old mechanic with a lopsided grin, calloused hands stained with oil, and a calm demeanor that usually steadied her racing heart. They'd been dating for 6 months, their relationship a whirlwind of late-night study sessions in her cramped dorm, stolen kisses behind the campus library, and moments like this, away from the prying eyes of Ravenswood and the pressures of their lives. The radio played a low, crackling tune, an old love song with a haunting melody, the static adding a layer of unease to the lyrics, the dashboard lights casting a faint green glow on their faces, the clock on the dash blinking 8:39 p.m., a silent reminder of the late hour. "This is nice," Emily said, her voice soft, a smile tugging at her lips as she leaned against Liam, the cool glass of the window pressing into her shoulder, the condensation beating under her breath. No roommates banging on the door, no deadlines looming, just us. It feels free. Liam chuckled, his arm resting on the back of the seat, his fingers brushing her hair, the touch a warm anchor in the cool night. "Yeah, figured we deserved a break. Been a hell of a week, your finals chewing you up, my overtime at the shop turning me into a zombie. This spot's perfect, quiet, private, away from it all." He glanced out the window, the dark forest looming beyond, the trees swaying gently in the breeze, their branches scraping against each other like skeletal fingers, the sound of faint whisper that made the hairs on his neck prickle. Emily nodded, her eyes following his gaze, a shiver running down her spine despite the warmth of the car, the heater humming softly. "It's a little creepy out there, though," she murmured, her voice hesitant, her fingers tracing the edge of the window. "All those trees. Feels like they're watching us, like they know something we don't." Liam grinned, squeezing her shoulder, his calloused palm rough against her sweater, his tone light but his eyes narrowing slightly. "Just your imagination, Em. It's just woods, nothing to worry about. Besides, I've got you covered." He leaned in, kissing her forehead, his lips warm against her skin, the moment a fleeting escape from the world outside, the clock ticking to 8:40 p.m., the night deepening around them. For a while, they sat in companionable silence, the radio filling the space with its crackling tune, the night wrapping around them like a velvet cloak. Emily rested her head on his shoulder, her breathing slowing, the tension of the week, final exams, a professor's harsh critique, the weight of her student loans, melting away in the cocoon of the car. But as the song faded into static, a new sound emerged, a faint, rhythmic scratching, like nails dragging across metal, coming from the driver's side door, a sound that sliced through the stillness like a knife. She sat up, her heart quickening, her hazel eyes wide, her hands gripping the seat, the fabric bunching under her fingers. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice tight, a tremor running through it, her breath fogging the glass. Liam frowned, tilting his head, his hand pausing on the steering wheel, the leather creaking under his grip. "Hear what?" The scratching came again, sharper this time, a deliberate scrape that sent a chill through the car, the sound reverberating in the metal, a rhythm that seemed alive. He rolled down his window a crack, the cool night air rushing in, carrying the scent of pine and something metallic, the sound clearer now, scratch, 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 a sound that seemed to originate from the door handle itself, a persistent clawing that made his stomach twist. "Turn it off," Emily said, her voice rising, her hands trembling as she clutched his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve, her eyes darting to the window, the darkness beyond a void of unknowns. "Liam, turn off the engine, something's out there, I can feel it." Liam hesitated, his grin fading, his hand moving to the key with a reluctant twist, the engine cutting out with a sputter, the silence deafening, the car settling into the night with a groan. The scratching stopped, replaced by an eerie stillness, the crickets outside falling silent, the forest holding its breath, the air growing heavy with an unspoken threat. He leaned toward the window, peering into the darkness, the faint outline of the oak tree visible against the starlit sky, its branches twisted like the arms of a giant, the shadows dancing with every sway. "Probably just a branch or an animal," he said, his voice steady but his eyes narrowing, his hand reaching for the flashlight on the dashboard, the metal cold against his palm. "Let's check it out, stay here." "No way," Emily protested, her voice shaking as she grabbed his sleeve, her nails digging deeper, her body pressing against the door, her fear a tangible force. "Don't go out there, it's not safe. What if it's someone? What if it's waiting for you?" Her voice cracked, her mind racing with images of shadowed figures, of hands with claws, of the stories her grandmother told of the woods, tales of lost souls and vengeful spirits. Liam sighed, his hand pausing, his gaze softening as he looked at her, his own unease mirrored in her eyes, the clock now at 8:42 p.m., the late hour amplifying the tension. "Okay, we'll stay put. But if it's nothing, you owe me a coffee tomorrow, and a back rub." He flashed a reassuring smile, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed his own growing doubt, the scratching a memory that lingered, a phantom sound in the stillness. They sat in the darkened car, the silence pressing against the windows, the only sound their breathing, quick and shallow, the air inside growing thick with anticipation. Minutes passed, the scratching absent, the night reclaiming its quiet, the crickets resuming their song, a faint chorus that did little to ease the knot in Emily's stomach. She relaxed slightly, her grip loosening, her head resting against the seat, her eyes still fixed on the window, the glass a barrier between safety and the unknown. "Maybe it was nothing," she murmured, her voice hesitant, her fingers tracing the seam of her sweater, a nervous habit that grounded her. But then it came again, scratch, 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 louder, more insistent, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the car, the metal groaning under the pressure, the rhythm accelerating like a heartbeat. Liam's hand tightened on the flashlight, his jaw clenching as he rolled the window down further, the cool air biting at his face, the sound now a cacophony that filled the space, a clawing that seemed to claw at his sanity. "Hello?" he called, his voice firm but edged with uncertainty, the beam of the flashlight cutting through the darkness, illuminating the twisted branches of the oak, the shadows twisting into shapes that suggested movement, the night alive with unseen threats. No answer, just the scratching, a relentless rhythm that grew faster, more frantic, a sound that seemed to mock their fear. Emily's breath hitched, her hand flying to the door lock, her fingers fumbling as she pressed it down, the click a small comfort, her body trembling as she pressed herself against the seat, her voice a whisper. "Liam, let's go, please, I can't take this." "Hold on," Liam said, his voice low, his hand reaching for the door handle, the flashlight trembling in his grip, the metal cold and slick with sweat. He pushed the door open a crack, the hinges creaking like the groan of an old house, the night air rushing in, cold and heavy with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, something wrong. He leaned out, the beam sweeping the side of the car, and froze, a gasp escaping his lips as the light caught something metallic glinting on the handle, a rusted iron hook, its curved tip embedded in the metal, swaying slightly as if recently placed, the scratches on the door a testament to its presence, the rust flaking off like dried blood, the sight a punch to his gut. "What is it?" Emily cried, her voice shrill, her hands covering her face as she leaned away, the sight of the hook sending a wave of nausea through her, her stomach churning, her mind racing with images of a hand wielding it, a figure lurking just out of sight. "It's a hook," Liam said, his voice shaking, his hand withdrawing as if burned, the flashlight beam trembling, illuminating the hook's jagged edge, the rust a stark contrast to the car's faded blue paint. "Someone put it there, someone was here, right next to us." He slammed the door shut, the thud echoing in the confined space, his hands fumbling with the keys, the engine roaring to life with a cough, the tires spinning on the gravel as he pulled away from the overlook, the hook left behind, a silent threat swaying in the breeze, the night swallowing it into shadow. The drive back to Ravenswood was tense, the car filled with the hum of the engine, Emily's quiet sobs, and Liam's muttered curses under his breath, his hands tight on the wheel, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror, expecting to see a figure pursuing them. The hook loomed in their minds, a symbol of something unknown, something sinister, a question mark that hung over every mile. "What was that?" Emily whispered, her voice breaking, her hands twisting in her lap, her nails digging into her palms, her eyes darting to the side mirror, the fog thickening, the road a tunnel of uncertainty. "Who would do that? Why us?" "I don't know," Liam said, his voice tight, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched, the image of the hook burning in his mind, a memory that refused to fade. "But we're not going back there. We'll tell the police, let them figure it out. Maybe it's some sick joke, but it felt personal." His words were a lifeline, a man's attempt to rationalize the irrational, the late hour, now 9 p.m., amplifying the dread that settled in the car. They reached Emily's apartment, a small flat above a bakery on Main Street, the scent of fresh bread lingering in the stairwell, a stark contrast to the fear that clung to their clothes, their skin, their souls. Inside, they sat on the couch, the lights dim, the curtains drawn, the radio off, the silence heavy, the clock on the wall ticking past 9:15 p.m. Emily clutched a mug of tea, her hands trembling, the steam curling around her face, her voice hesitant as she stared into the liquid. What if it wasn't an animal? What if someone wanted to hurt us? What if they followed us here? Her words hung in the air, a question that neither could answer, her hazel eyes reflecting the dim light, a mirror to her terror. Liam shook his head, his hand running through his hair, his face pale, the grease stains on his hands a stark reminder of his normal life, now shattered. "We'll report it tomorrow. For now, we stay safe, lock the doors, keep the windows shut, maybe crash here together." His voice was steady, but his eyes darted to the window, the glass a fragile barrier, the night beyond a void of unknowns. The next day, they went to the Ravenswood police station, a squat brick building with a flickering neon sign that buzzed like a trapped insect, the air inside stale with coffee, old paper, and the faint whiff of cigarette smoke. Officer Tom Ridley, a grizzled man with a gray mustache, tired eyes, and a demeanor that spoke of too many late nights, listened as they recounted the night, his pen scratching notes, his expression a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "A hook on the door handle," he said, his voice gruff, his brow furrowing, the chair creaking as he leaned back. "Could have been kids playing a prank. Happens more than you'd think around here, especially near the overlook. We'll check it out, but don't expect much without a suspect or prints." "It wasn't a prank," Emily insisted, her voice rising, her hands clenched on the edge of the desk, her nails digging into the wood, her eyes pleading, the memory of the scratching fresh in her mind. "It felt wrong. The way it scratched, the way it was placed, it was deliberate, like someone was testing us, watching us." Ridley sighed, leaning forward, his elbows on the desk, the pen tapping a rhythm that mirrored the scratching, his tone measured but unconvinced. "I'll send a patrol, Miss Grayson. We'll look for the hook, check for tracks, but without a body or a clear threat, it's thin. Keep your doors locked, and call if you see anything else, anything at all." He handed them a card, his fingers brushing the paper, his eyes lingering on their faces, a flicker of unease breaking through his professional mask. Days passed, the incident fading into an uneasy memory, but the unease lingered like a shadow, a weight that followed them. Emily dreamed of the hook, its rusted tip scratching at her window, a figure with hollow eyes standing in the fog, its hand a hook that gleamed in the moonlight, its presence a weight on her chest that woke her gasping, her sheets tangled around her legs. Liam grew restless, his nights at the shop longer, his hands trembling as he worked on engines, the sound of metal on metal a trigger for the memory of that night, the hook a phantom that haunted his every move. They avoided the overlook, their dates confined to the safety of town, coffee shops, the diner, the park under the midday sun, but the shadow of the hook followed them, a whisper in the wind, a scratch in the silence, a presence that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. One evening, as they sat in Emily's apartment, the rain tapping against the windows like impatient fingers, the clock ticking past 10 p.m., the scratching returned, not from outside, but from within the walls, a faint scratch, scratch that made Emily drop her mug, the tea spilling across the floor in a dark stain, the ceramic shattering into pieces. "Liam, it's here," she cried, her voice shrill, her hands covering her ears, her eyes wide with terror, the sound vibrating through the room, a rhythm that matched her racing heart. Liam stood, his face pale, his hand reaching for a wrench from his toolbox, the metal cold and heavy in his grip, his knuckles whitening. "Stay back," he said, his voice steady but his eyes darting, the sound growing louder, more insistent, coming from the bedroom, a direction that made his blood run cold. He pushed the door open, the hinges creaking like the groan of an old ship, the room dark except for the faint glow of a street lamp through the blinds, the shadows stretching across the floor like grasping hands. The scratching stopped, replaced by a silence that pressed against his ears, the air thick with the scent of damp earth, and then he saw it, on the inside handle of the bedroom window, a rusted hook, its tip embedded in the wood, swaying slightly, the scratches on the frame fresh, the rust flaking off like dried blood, the sight a violation that stole his breath. "How did it get there?" Emily whispered, her voice breaking, her hands gripping his arm as she peeked around him, the sight of the hook sending a wave of nausea through her, her knees weak, her mind racing with images of an intruder, a phantom, a curse. "It was locked. How did it get inside?" "I don't know," Liam said, his voice shaking, his hand trembling as he approached, the wrench raised, the hook's presence a threat that defied logic, the metal cold under his touch as he reached for it, the air growing colder, the shadows deepening. His fingers brushed the hook, and a voice whispered from the darkness, "You can't escape," a rasp that chilled his blood, the sound emanating from the walls, the floor, the very fabric of the room, a voice that seemed to know them, to hunt them. They fled the apartment, the hook left behind, The sound of the whisper echoing in their ears, the police called again, Officer Ridley's skepticism turning to concern as he examined the scene, the hook bagged as evidence, his voice low, his hands steady. "This isn't normal," he said, his eyes narrowing, the mustache twitching as he spoke. "We'll set up patrols, dust for prints, but be careful. This feels like more than a prank, keep your eyes open." The town buzzed with rumors, the overlook a place of fear, the hook a legend growing in the night, the whispers of the elderly a chorus of warnings about the woods, about a man with a hook who took the unwary. The terror escalated, the scratching following them like a curse, on car doors as they drove, window frames of Liam's shop as he worked late, even the front door of Emily's apartment, each hook a message, each scratch a countdown, the rust a stain on their lives. Emily saw figures in the fog, their faces obscured by shadows, their hands holding hooks that gleamed with malice, their whispers a chorus of dread that woke her sweating, her screams muffled by her pillow. Liam's dreams were plagued by the sound, his hands carving hooks into metal, his mind unraveling as he saw the figure, a man with a hook for a hand, his face a ruin of scars, his eyes hollow, his voice a rasp that called his name. One night, as they parked near the shop, the clock nearing midnight, the scratching returned, louder, a cacophony that shook the car, the hook on the handle again, and a figure emerged from the shadows, a man with a hook for a hand, his face a mass of scars, his eyes hollow pits, his clothes tattered, the hook glinting in the moonlight, the air thick with the scent of decay. "You're mine," he rasped, his voice a growl, his figure advancing, the hook scraping the ground, the sound a death knell. The chase began, the couple running, the figure pursuing with unnatural speed, the hook scratching at the night, the town a maze of terror, the streets empty, the lights dim. They reached the police station, the story spilling out, the hook man a phantom, the legend confirmed, Officer Ridley's face grim as he organized a search, the town gripped by fear, the overlook a cursed place, the scratching a sound that lingered, a hook on every handle, a shadow that never left, a terror that haunted Ravenswood into eternity.